Hello, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, President of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to talk about inflation. It's a big topic for the past year or two, and I figured, hey, let's throw a few facts out at you. So we're going to talk about 10 things that you should know about inflation. Now, after decades of hibernation, inflation is back. When I used to talk to clients about inflation, it was like this mystical, magical thing that they didn't see and didn't believe happened. But now that it's literally in our face, we're going to talk about some basics about this invisible thief. So, first step is, what is inflation? Well, inflation is why a dozen eggs cost more today than they did a year ago, or 2 years ago, actually, and way more than 50 years ago. So, in technical terms, it's a rise in the cost of goods and services that ultimately erodes your long term purchasing power. And you may hear it referenced in terms of CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. The second thing you need to know, why is it a concern today? Well, unprecedented government stimulus during the pandemic helped keep consumer demands high. And of course, supply chains could not keep up. Labor shortages also drove wages higher, which created a perfect storm for rising inflation. Item number three, what can I expect out of Item number three is, what can I expect in my daily life? So, as prices for everyday items rise significantly, your income may not cover as much as it used to. Cars, housing, gas, electronic prices have all been particularly impacted, especially gas or energy prices, as well as food prices. They have gone through the roof. That is the biggest complaint that I get from my clients. It's just a really, really difficult conversation sometimes. Now let's look at item number four is all inflation bad? Like most things in life, moderation is the key. A little bit of inflation means the economy is growing, but rapidly rising prices can noticeably erode consumers' purchasing power or force retirees to dip deeper into their nest eggs than expected. Now, number five, how often has inflation been an issue? Well, inflation tends to crop up after wars as the economy returns to peacetime rhythm. Climbing oil prices are also a common culprit. The 1970s are the most well-known period of lasting inflation, caused by two oil supply-related issues. Oil prices also spurred inflation in the 1980s and the early 1990s, but it wasn't much of a concern in the US again until 2022. That is a long time not to really have to worry about inflation, but here we are. Item number six, do rising prices just run unchecked? Well, one of the main goals of the Federal Reserve, or we call the Fed, is to keep inflation near 2% over the long term. The 2% target is meant to keep inflation gradual and more predictable to help minimize its impact. Item number seven, what could end high inflation? Well, supply and demand can balance on their own, like US gas prices did between the summer and winter of 2022. But the Fed can step in and hike interest rates to help curb high overall inflation. And now in 2022, the Fed aggressively raised rates to lower that demand, to fight off the inflation, in other words. Number eight, what if prices reverse course? Now, the Fed does strive to maintain a Goldilocks-like balance of inflation that's neither too high nor too low. If prices decline rapidly, which is known as deflation, it can be a sign of a weakening economy. Without sufficient demand, companies may end up cutting production and jobs. Item number nine, what could happen to my portfolio? It's a big question for everyone. So some asset classes are more sensitive to inflation than others. Fixed income is particularly vulnerable to inflation. Although Treasury inflation protected securities, which are also called TIPS for short, and you see why, they can adjust their principal to account for rising or falling inflation. which basically means their interest payments adjust as well. And finally, item number 10, can anything good come from inflation? Well, some asset classes have historically thrived during periods of high inflation. Commodities may be particularly well suited because they can pass price increases along to consumers. Equities have tended to perform well too, especially US large cap value, US small cap, and in international equities. So, those are the 10 things you should know about inflation. Again, usually inflation is the silent killer of your cash. Right now, it's kind of in your face. So, it's a great time to just look and see where the areas of inflation are inhibiting your purchasing power and make note of it for your long term planning. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Again, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. Our website is forgewealth.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Forge Wealth, on Insta at Forge Wealth Management, and LinkedIn, Regina McCann Hess. So make it a great day.